Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about playing shows and some things that you can do to make your overall show experience better, from making your band hopefully sound a little better, as well as making your life easy logistically while you're going about playing those shows. If you're someone that's played your first few shows and you're kind of ready to take things a little more seriously and step it up, here are some things that I have kind of learned along the way from playing shows with my bands, filling in playing shows, as a guitar tech touring with bigger artists, all kinds of tips and tricks that I kind of learned along the way that make my life easier now when I am in a gigging environment. Most of this is going to be guitar player focused, so if that sounds like something you're into, let's get into it. So you've played your first few gigs and you're ready to kind of step it up. You want to do some things to make your live show better, whether that's everything from the sound to making your load in easier to having a more reliable setup. You're ready to kind of improve those things. That's kind of what I want to talk about today. This is not a definitive list of everything you need to know before you play your first show or anything like that. And most of this you probably don't even need to do for like your very first show. But if you're starting to get more serious with things, here's a few things I think you can do that will make your life and everyone else's life easier in a gigging environment. The first thing I want to talk about is going to be related to the sound that the audience hears from your amplifier and how to improve that and make it the best. We all want our artistic vision to come across the best it can, or just present our band or artistry in the best way that is possible. And the way that we're going to be doing that is through what people are hearing coming out of the PA speakers. So we need to get that sound as good as we can. This is assuming that you already have a quality amp and in general you're already happy with the guitar sound you hear when you listen back to your amp, but maybe you've heard back your sound through the PA and you haven't enjoyed it as much, which I know we've all run into that, where we think we sound great and then you see a video and it's like, oh, that did not come across the way we intended. These are kind of some things you can do to alleviate that and have a more consistent sound. There's kind of a whole range of ways you can go about that. So the first way and the cheapest way is to find the sweet spot on your amp for where a single microphone, such as an SM57, sounds in front of your amp, and taping off that section of your amp so that way the sound person knows where to put the microphone. There's nothing worse than having your amp sound great, but then a sound person throws a mic in front of your amp in a really weird position that's not close to the speaker or not in the part of the speaker you want, and it sounds horrible and fizzy or super dark and muddy. But one thing you can do to kind of alleviate that is to just put a little mark on your amp of where you found the sound to be the best. It's good to kind of in a controlled environment like we have here to sit here and play with mic position and find what works best. Every venue is gonna have different gear and all that kind of stuff. So there's no guarantee they're gonna have the same mics, but obviously the SM57 is the most popular mic for miking a big guitar cab. So I would assume that is what they're gonna have. Kind of get a sound dialed to where you like it with a single 57. The next step up from that would be to start bringing your own mic, whether that is a 57 or something else. I know for me, I really like the Sennheiser E609 on a guitar cab if I'm only gonna have one mic. I personally really enjoy having two mics. I think that's a way better sound, but if you don't have a front of house, I would certainly not expect a venue sound person to want to blend two mics to get your ideal sound. That's just not really feasible at the level that I'm discussing today. As much as we'd all love to do that, I would kind of try to get things the way you like it with one mic, and bring your own mic is definitely something that you can do to get that sound more consistent, and having it taped off where that mic goes is definitely gonna be a big step in the right direction. If you want to get even more consistent than that, and in some cases actually step up your sound even more, you can also defer to solutions like the Torpedo Captor X. These are cool because you can set up basically a virtual cab sound with multiple mics and everything within the software of this, and then you just get a nice XLR out that can go to the front of house, and you'll have the basically exact same sound every single night with your tube amp, which is really cool. Obviously a lot of amplifiers also have a direct out like this, and if the direct out on your amp sounds good, then that's a good option as well. I do really like these, but you do have to have an app to like get this dialed in and whatnot, which I don't love. Super clunky to me. I like the gear that you can just kind of get the sound you want from the unit, but that also means that you won't have as much flexibility, so there's always pros and cons. There's also older solutions like the Rocktron Phantom cab we have here. These definitely don't sound as good as the Torpedo Captor, and you definitely can't dial these in as much, but these are way simpler. All the controls are right here. These are pretty good. I mean, I think the sound you'll get with a real mic is gonna be better than this. This is definitely than a real mic in a bad mic position, so your mileage may vary. There's lots of different solutions at different price points. The Universal Audio aux is kind of the flagship of this. It's a little big and a little kind of clunky to be using in a gigging situation, so I found the Torpedo Captor X to be a good middle ground. All those are good things you can do to start getting your amp sound more consistent night to night. At the end of the day, you want to make the sound person's life as easy as possible. They are not necessarily your sound person, so you want to do everything you can to just give them a quality source, and the easier you make their life, usually the better your show will sound, be nice, and try to make their life as easy as you can. Number 2 is going to be having a quality instrument. This kind of applies to your entire setup, making sure everything is quality, but especially from a guitar player's perspective, making sure that your guitar is a gig-worthy instrument that is going to handle the trials and tribulations of being gigged and being on the road. Everything from temperature changes to stuff getting thrown around a trailer. You want to have reliable stuff that is going to be able to deal with all that and work night after night and sound the way you want it to. A higher quality guitar is also almost always going to intonate better and stay in tune better. And there is nothing worse than playing a gig and you're out of tune. There's just no way to make that sound good. You want to be as in tune as possible at all times, and I would say it's easiest to get that result with a nice instrument. To speak specifically on like Fender instruments, I have always advocated that I really enjoy the Squier Classic Vibe stuff, but I wouldn't really consider those roadworthy instruments. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen someone buy like a Squier Classic Vibe Telly, plays and sounds great, it's cool, and then after the first few shows and sweating on it and the temperature stuff, just the neck starts getting funky, the frets start lifting, the pots start getting crunchy, all sorts of things where it's just, you know, those instruments aren't built for that. And there's nothing wrong with that. You want to start getting into the stuff that is built to deal with what you're going to be putting it through. I know for Fender, that kind of starts somewhere between like your Fender Mexico range and your Fender Japan range. I would say everything that they offer in their Fender US and Japan range at this current moment or in recent history is definitely roadworthy in gigging quality. A lot of the Mexico stuff is really great as well. Unfortunately, I know that it's an investment, but I would say once you start getting to like the $1,000 price point range and up, that can be really helpful. Country of origin is not like the only factor by any means. There's lots of instruments made in China or Indonesia or Korea that are definitely like gigging quality. I know a lot of the higher end LTD stuff is still super solid and it'll be very reliable for you. Some of the more entry level and like budget conscious models aren't always the best. Even if they're great at home, sometimes they just don't hold up as well in a gigging environment. You also don't want to go too far with this and start bringing out like priceless vintage pieces unless you can afford it and that's what you want to do. And if you can, then good on you. Stuff is going to get worn, stuff is going to get damaged, your guitar is going to get chipped up. That is just the reality of playing a lot. So don't bring out an instrument that you don't want that to happen to. Higher end instruments are made for that. They're built to deal with all that, but it is going to show some wear. So now that you have your quality instrument, you do need a way to get it from point A to point B, C, and everywhere in between. Having a great case is really, really important. Especially if you're touring, stuff is going to be getting thrown into a trailer, stuff is going to be potentially flown, maybe you're going to be checking your stuff here and there. So you need to have a case that can deal with that and protect your instrument well. I would say most modern hard cases are going to protect your guitar in the way that they need to. I know I personally really like the modern Gibson cases. The modern ABS Fender cases are also really great. I don't as much enjoy some of like the kind of chipboard Gator cases or whatever that aren't really fitted. Having a case that's fitted to your instrument is really important, as that's going to keep it way safer than just kind of a generic case that lets your guitar float around a bit. SKB makes some awesome, really, really heavy duty cases, which those can be a bit too much sometimes, but those are really great options. I know some of them are on wheels. But then kind of stepping up from there, getting into guitar boats, I have the Scott Dixon case. I really like these because you can fit 3 guitars in them. We'll get to why that's really convenient to be able to fit 3 guitars. Those are great. Enki also makes some cool cases for this as well that I have seen and I have enjoyed using. Circle 3 makes some good ones, which I've used in the past as well. There's all kinds of options here. Having a good case will not only keep your instruments safe, but it will also make your life loading in and loading out a lot easier. There's nothing worse than having something like in a gig bag that now it's fragile and you're worried about it, but also you can't really stack that in a trailer. Trailer pack's way easier when everything is a quality road case, from your amp case to your guitar case, all that stuff. So I know this is something that most people already know, but just making sure that you not only have good backups, but having the right backups is really, really important. You don't want to just bring your one guitar and your one tuning and just hope that everything's going to go well, because things are going to go wrong. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong at some point in your gigging career. Having a second guitar that is set up and ready to go in the same tuning with similar pickups is really important. In a perfect world, obviously it's great to have 2 of the same thing or 2 things that are very similar, but you don't always need to go like that crazy. I know for a lot of people, I'll see like maybe they'll have bought a Mexican Telly and they're really enjoying that, and then at some point you step up to the American one, and now that second guitar ends up becoming the backup. I think that's a great option. That usually works out just fine. Your backup doesn't need to be as good as your primary guitar, as you hopefully won't be using it as much. But you still want to have something quality that can deal with everything on the road. Even if you're not playing the guitar every night, temperature changes as well as just general wear and tear from travel are still going to apply to that second guitar. So making sure that it is still something that will be able to deal with that is important. It's also a nice luxury that if you're using like a Strat as your main guitar, that your backup is either another Strat or something else with a single coil pickup. So that way, like, your volume and overall tone structure isn't changing like a ton from guitar to guitar. You want to make switching between guitars as seamless as possible. I've seen a lot of people buy just the same guitar twice, which is maybe overkill. Obviously, if you're in an environment where you're using multiple guitars in your show, you want a humbucker guitar for this song, you want a Strat for this song, whatever, that's different, that's totally cool. You not only want to make sure that you have a backup guitar, but you also want to make sure you have backups of other stuff, most notably cables. Always have a few backup patch cables as well as extra backup just regular cables. I personally really enjoy using the Mogami cables since it's very easy to get those exchanged with their lifetime warranty. They definitely are expensive up front, but once you buy them, you can get them replaced if you ever need to. I will say I've rarely ever had to get them replaced, but it's nice to know that they can be. I have replaced a couple at like Guitar Center stores and it's never really been a problem. Good cables are good and having extras is really helpful. It's personally been very helpful to me to have a second guitar that is just as good and sounds similar to the first one in times where stuff happens, because it will happen. For example, if in the middle of the show you break a string, it's nice to be able to grab your backup guitar and not have to worry about that and just get right back into playing. Which brings us to the stuff that you should bring in your tech case to keep your instruments serviced on the road. Now, we could do a whole entire video on this, and I think we will at some point. There's definitely some good essentials to have with you that I find to be really helpful. Relying from what we just talked about, having strings and having many sets of strings is really helpful, especially if you're like touring. You can be restringing, every other show, or whatever your schedule that you desire is. And that way, when a string does break, you have a spare. If you keep fresh strings on your guitars, you probably won't be dealing with string breaks all that often if your guitar is set up right. And all of the time that I have worked with Against the Current, doing a few tours for them, I don't think we've ever had a single string break, because when I was doing that gig, we were restringing like either every show or every other show. So keeping fresh strings on is definitely helpful to mitigate that. A small tangent, but guitar tech tip there. Stretch your strings a lot. You'd way rather a string break during the setup process than when you are playing it at a show. Obviously, in order to restring your guitar, you're going to need all these standard setup tools to do that. I personally really enjoy the Music Nomad kits, so I always keep those on me, as well as just any general cleaning supplies. You're going to be sweating on this stuff, and you want to keep your stuff clean. That's what is going to make it last. Like I said, having a quality instrument helps, but you also need to maintain that quality instrument. Having basic cleaning supplies, everything from guitar polish to lemon oil to the proper claws and all that, is all really important. Also, very much advocate for having Deoxit or something like Deoxit, any sort of electronic contact cleaner, as pots are going to get scratchy, jacks are going to get scratchy, all that kind of stuff, and having a good contact cleaner will really save you. I don't like taking my guitars outside of the house without having something like this with me. It's very important and can definitely save you in a bind, and it's inevitable that at some point your electronics are going to need to be cleaned. A scratchy pot very quickly turns into a pot that doesn't output at all or gives a weak output, and none of us want to deal with that. Once you get a little further down the road, it's also nice to start bringing out stuff like a soldering iron. So if you need to replace parts, whether it's because you want to try different pickups or you need to replace a pot or whatever, that's great to have, but I don't think that's an essential towards the beginning. So in summary, make sure you have your strings, your setup supplies, your cleaning supplies, contact cleaner. With any luck, you should be good to go. So hopefully all of those things will help out if you are trying to take your live show a little more seriously. I know this is all stuff that's kind of helped me along the way and some fun tips that I've picked up. A ton of stuff that I learned was from working for bands or artists that were way further along than I was at that point in my music career. That's really the pro tip, is that if you can get a job as a tech or doing audio for a bigger band or artist, it'll be a lot of work, but it's also a really great way to learn and learn from people that have more experience than you might at that time. You can kind of pick and choose what things that you resonated with or didn't, and kind of use that on your own journey. We could definitely take this video way further and start talking about stuff like having a in-ear system and a full like self-contained rig where you're only running off your own power conditioners and you're just giving the front of house your ends, and everyone has monitor mixes and doing all that kind of stuff. You can even start getting the MIDI controlled lights. That's kind of maybe the next step down the road. And if you guys want us to do a video on that, definitely let us know. We could do a whole video just talking about in-ears or just talking about how to set up backing tracks for shows and kind of that sort of thing if you're in a situation that requires that. There's also lots of situations where maybe backtracks don't make sense. So if there's anything like that you want to see, definitely let us know. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys got something out of it. If you have any fun tips that you have learned from your shows over the years, please let us know down below in the comments. I know people always enjoy reading those. Share some wisdom if you have it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and we will see you in another video soon. Bye.
I can't believe it is close to me.